The big question is, where do consumers typically buy products online? And for the most part, the answer to that question is Amazon, then Walmart, eBay, Shopify, and other types of stores. But the truth is that a majority of online consumers are actually beginning their search for a product on Google. And so what exactly is this opportunity with Google Shopping? I like to think that you're going to be able to help your consumers in a few different ways. First, you'll be able to help your consumers know where to buy your product. Second, you'll help your consumers check out faster and get that product in a more seamless fashion. And third, you'll also help your customers always find you by being very prominent and on the biggest search engine.
The reach of Google Shopping is really broad, right? And I think what we see is that we see product ads really everywhere across this landscape. And there's kind of two primary means here that when you think about Google Shopping, right? So the first is, you see an ad here for this rice cooker, right? Maybe this ad is from Target, right? I can see some details about it on shopping.google.com, right? But then ultimately, I'm visiting the site. You see the blue button here in the middle. I'm clicking off to, in this case, Target, where I can make the purchase on Target's website, buy on Google, right? So in this case, I see the same product, and I can add it to cart and check out directly on Google. Right now, in this case, it's still shipped from and sold by Target, but the transaction actually happens on Google, right? So it really is Google operating, effectively as a marketplace in this example. And then finally is local, right? And that's certainly, they've done a lot of innovations here just in the last several months, right? Since COVID. But really when Google recognizes that, maybe you're on mobile or, just really wants to show results that are near you, right? I think it's a recognition from Google that still the majority of commerce happens in stores, at least for now. And so as a result, they're going to show you indications that indicate you can pick it up today or, how many miles away it is from you, where it is on a map. And you'll see, the notation of curbside pickup is something that recently Google's added, again, to try to give that consumer more information about where the product is, how they can go and purchase it if they want to buy it local. So a lot of times people will say, well, I've got this product. Well, which keyword should I go bid on for this product? And in shopping, you really aren't doing that. So shopping's kind of turned things on its head. So what you're doing is you're getting your product data to Google. Okay, so you're sending them your catalog. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you do that and what that consists of. But essentially what you're doing is you're giving Google the information. So you're telling them you have this picture of this wagon and the title and the price and all of the various product attributes. And then what Google does is match this to relevant queries. Okay, and again, kind of oversimplifying here, but what Google would do is say, all right, these are relevant queries for this product. How do I go find a match? So when you do a search on google.com and you see, product results come back, that's because Google's looked at all the inventory that's out there, all the products that are out there and said, all right, these are the most relevant ones combined with sort of what you're willing to pay for that search, right? So that's kind of the first point to understand is that, again, you're not bidding directly on keywords, but what you are doing is want to make your content as relevant as possible so that you're matching to the right keywords, because that's a big part of what will drive success. Walk you through the top 5 strategies that can kind of build on that concept. And again, these are all ones that we leverage today as part of our work with our clients. So the first one is turning what is called smart shopping into what we call smart margin-based shopping. So if you're not familiar with smart shopping is something that Google rolled out probably 2 years ago, I guess, and really in earnest in the last, say, 18 months. And smart shopping is what it allows you to do. It allows you to show your products across several different places. And this is the places they show, right? So they show on search, just like I talked about earlier. They show on display. They also are eligible to show on YouTube, and they also show in Gmail, right? And so what smart shopping does is basically you give Google, a set of products, and they figure out where to go serve those products, okay? And now in smart shopping, the way it works is, you give it a goal. So let's say let's say your goal is 500% return, right? And said another way, that'd be a return on ad spend of 5, meaning for every $1 I spend on advertising, I want to get 5 back in sales. Well, so if you do that, then the automation will run and it'll figure out, Google will figure out, all right, where should I serve these ads? Which ones should I show to? What people, what time of day, all these other factors. And so let's say you're doing that and Google's hitting your goal and your return is 520%, right? So that's great. And let's say your impression share is 28%, which, impression share, if you're not familiar with it, means just what percentage of the time does one of your ads show when it's eligible, right? So 28% of the time is relatively low, meaning that 72% of the time your ad didn't show for any number of reasons. Well, so what we can do is we can take this and sort of take the concept I mentioned earlier around product margin and say, all right, if that's what we get as a whole, what if we break things up? And so what if we take the product catalog and separate it into high margin, medium, and low margin products, right? And now you need to know which products are higher, medium, and low, and you could set thresholds. You could get as simple or as complicated as you wanted to here. But maybe for our high margin products, right, we know that we can actually spend a little bit more on advertising, right? Because we can afford to get down to a 3-to-1 on those. Whereas on our low margin products, really a 5-to-1, we're upside down and we're losing money, right? So we want to set the goal higher for that. So the strategy here is to split up the catalog into really essentially 3 catalogs, right? High, medium, and low margin products. And when we do that, then what we can see is the fact that, all right, we can raise our impression share on our high margin products, right? Probably at a lower return, but limit our impression share on some of those low margin products. So again, we're helping inform the algorithm and the automation at Google with another signal, which is our product margin. Because again, given the trade-off, right, if we don't tell Google which ones are high versus medium versus low, they don't know that. And so they're just as likely to serve up a low margin product for a click as a high, and that's not what we want, right? I mean, if all things are equal, we'd rather products that generate more margin are the ones that served, right? So taking smart shopping and sort of taking it to the next level with product margin is that first strategy. So the second one is, I mentioned that one of the elements being the query is really leveraging your search query data to improve shopping. And so in Google, there's something called the search query report that you can get, and really that's a gold mine of information because it shows you all the things that you're matching to, right? All of the queries that you're matching to. So let's say in this example for a snowboard helmet, right? These are examples of all the queries that I'm going to be mapping to. Well, one of the things that we can do is we can then look at that data and figure out from the query data which ones are performing differently. And so this is something we call query-driven shopping, which is really designed to, if you think of a funnel, right, you have very broad search terms, which we know tend to not perform as well because it's not clear what the person's searching for, right? Snowboard helmet, as opposed to very specific terms like this, gyro ledge, matte red, size small, right? Which is a very specific term. And we know that just from the data that the more specific the query, generally speaking, the better the return. And so what this approach allows us to do is essentially we can split this funnel into 2. And so for the same product, if it's mapping to a very broad query, we might conclude that, we only want to pay 45 cents for that click, right? Because it's a pretty broad query, doesn't return that well, versus something that's pretty specific, we may be okay paying $1.25, right? And so by segmenting these queries out and bidding accordingly, we're better able to match what is the expected return we're going to get here to the cost. Because if we don't do something like this, again, Google is going to say, all right, for this product, it's a reasonable result for any of these queries here, but we know that they're going to perform differently, and we want to account for that when we think about bidding or automation. So that's the second one, is query-driven shopping and really leveraging that query data as part of your campaign. The third one is around promoting full price items. And this is really using price as a lever. It could be full price items. You could do this in reverse with clearance as an example. But the strategy here is to use item price as a signal to promote your full price items for a specific category. So if you look at the screenshot here, right, this is a search for Tommy Armour driver. And the results from Google, there's nothing wrong with these results. These are good search results, right? I mean, they're all Tommy Armour driver result. Well, the fifth one's a TaylorMade, different brand. And so the two of these are both from Dick's Sporting Goods, right? But if you'll notice, the first one is $99, right? So much lower price point item. And then the third one, I think is probably a newer item, is $299. Well, depending on our goals and depending on, the goals of the advertiser, right? We may want to promote this newer product because it's new. Maybe we have a lot of inventory of it. And that's really what we want to show. Well, so the way we can do that is, we take our product catalog, and for this subset of products, we can segment those out into different categories. So, for instance, within our product catalog, we take golf clubs, and then further we take drivers, and then we can put them into two groups, right? So full price products and discount products. And this can, a system like this can be dynamic in nature. So as products change in price, we can move them from one bucket to the other if we wanted to. And so the strategy here is to take these, segment them out, and then bid them differently. So if we really want the full price new line of products, you think about like categories like electronics, apparel as well, certainly golf clubs, sporting goods that have a really strong seasonal nature, right? New season stuff comes out, you want to focus on that, you want to bid more on that. You kind of think of the parallels almost like in a physical store, right? The physical retailer doesn't put, when the new products come in, you tend to put those front and center. You want to get them in front of consumers. So basically this idea is doing the exact same thing, right? And saying, all right, we can set different return goals or different bids to control the traffic volume so that when somebody searches for Tommy Armour driver, we want to show this full price item. And again, you could do the same thing in reverse. If you really wanted to clear out the discount stuff, you could do that, right? It just depends on what your goals are. But the idea of the strategy is that we're going to take price and use price as a lever as far as optimization. All right, so the fourth one is for those of you who are here who are omni-channel retailers and have local stores. One of the things that's really interesting, we've seen this really interesting over the last several months with the pandemic, is that looking at conversion rates by location and really seeing how those are different. And so looking at strategies around, do we bid differently near our store, right? Because we know that a portion of people are going to come into the store. And so using that local data as part of how we think about local inventory ads, but also just how we think about just, Google shopping in general, right? If we know that we have a store within a given radius, 5 miles from a store, we may choose to bid higher in that area, knowing that maybe the ROI doesn't look as good, but actually a lot of those people, it is driving traffic into that store, right? So I think sometimes, companies get into silos and they're not really thinking about the full picture. But I think if you are an omni-channel retailer, it's important to think about what your store footprint looks like. Of course, if your stores are open, that's an important, element of this too right now. But looking at that and then using that as a lever as well when you think about bidding. And again, we've seen some really interesting dynamics here over the last several months with, in areas of the country where stores were closed, we've seen online conversion rates really go up, right? Because if you think about the consumer behavior, the consumer is doing a search and they realize, this product's not available at any of the stores that I usually shop at, so I'm more likely to buy it online. So we've definitely seen the conversion rates really fluctuate quite a bit depending on where stores are open versus where they're closed. So that's another important signal if you're running Google shopping campaigns and you have local stores, really looking at, and even if you don't, I think even just so the online conversion rates have varied as well. Taking that into account when you're making bidding decisions and automation decisions, because if the return is much better, you want to make sure you're putting more of your dollars in those areas compared to maybe areas where the return's not as good. So I just talked about that already. So it's basically just taking the online data plus the offline data and sort of trying to get the full picture of your overall sales footprint. Okay. So the fifth one is around Google Shopping Actions. And so the buy on Google aspect that I talked about. So, low price items, like in this case, this is a floor mat that's $10, right? These are very difficult to advertise profitably, right? And I'll show you why. And so the idea here is to leverage Google Shopping Actions to sell these items and improve your cost per acquisition, right? So if you think about a product like this, you just do the math on it. You know, let's say you got 100 clicks, and let's say your conversion rate was 5%, which would be pretty good. You know, but at $10, you made $50 in revenue. Well, let's say you're only paying 25 cents a click. It's still $25 in cost, and so your ROAS is a 2. You know, you have a $5 CPA. You know, and that's pretty tough. Like, I mean, you got to have some really good margins to be able to pay 50 cents on every dollar to Google and still make money, right? So when you get into really low price items, you know, sort of less than $20, $25, that's pretty difficult to do. Well, this is a really good use for buy on Google, right? In the shopping actions program. So, you know, in this case, let's say I sell, you know, 5 of these for $50. Previously, you know, there was a commission that went with these, but Google announced last week that the Buy on Google program is going to, there's a new pilot, new beta that's going to make essentially the commission free. And so, you know, you have to pay payment processing fees, but, you know, for sake of this argument, you know, you're going to get your marketing cost down to 0, which if your marketing cost is 0, that's a pretty nice infinite ROI on that. So when you think about low priced items, especially if you maybe have an established Google Shopping program, and you know, a lot of cases, maybe you just stop bidding on those because it just didn't make sense to advertise them. You know, I definitely would recommend looking at Buy on Google as an option, as an outlet for some of those products that are relatively inexpensive. Okay, and then number 6 strategy, just as a bonus. Again, everybody likes things that are free. Make sure you're taking advantage of the organic listings in Google Shopping. So again, and it's really a testament to how quickly these programs change. Google announced back in mid-April that a portion of the real estate on the Google Shopping tab would be free listings, right? So essentially organic, you could think of it that way. And so if you look at this screenshot here, right, I mean, on the Shopping tab, in this example, the top row here is all sponsored ads, and then the bottom row and so on is free listings. It's not always like that. Sometimes you'll see the whole page is organic and free. Sometimes you'll see that there's very little organic, if any, on this page. But in general, across our clients, you know, we've seen, for most cases, anywhere from about a 2 to an 8% increase in clicks coming from this organic traffic. Now you may say, well, you know, 2%, 5%, it's not that much big of a deal. But, you know, look, if you're spending a lot of money on Google advertising and you get 5% more clicks for free, that's pretty good, right? So make sure you're taking advantage of this. It's super easy to do. You want to make sure that you're getting that free traffic again. Maybe it's only a few, you know, 100 or 1,000 clicks a day, but again, free is free.